Commencer. Alors, bonsoir tout le monde. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 10th council meeting. So roll call, all members of council are present and accounted for. We'll start with the territorial acknowledgement and statement of reflection.
We acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe and the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, and Kanien'kehá:ka peoples. We acknowledge our shared obligation to respect, honor, and sustain these lands and the natural resources contained within.
Thank you, Councillor. Attendu que le Canada est formé sur les principes qui reconnaissent la suprématie de Dieu, la primauté du droit, prenons un moment de réflexion personnelle. Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command, car son bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Son histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for Canada, we stand on guard for thee. All right, thank you. So we move to item number 4, additions, deletions, or amendments. So we are going to add item 11I, verbal update, council meeting highlights, and we are adding 18A, a request by Councillor Armstrong for rec complex update question. I need a mover. Anything else? No. So I need a mover and seconder. So moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Lauren. Call for the vote. All in favor? Thank you. So agenda is approved as amended. So number 6, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none. Item 7, adoption of minutes, regular council minutes from January 27th. So motion to approve the minutes as presented. This is moved by Councillor Lalonde, seconded by Councillor Deakin. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Approved. Thank you. Item 8, presentations and citizens' recognitions for the sports, community service, and volunteerism recognition. So I'm very, very humbled and pleased to be here tonight. This is probably, as even my predecessor used to say it, and I understand why. This is the best part of this job. So thank you very much for being here tonight. Alors, bonsoir à tous. I'm extremely honored to be here this evening as we recognize and celebrate someone who embodies the spirit of volunteerism and a community pride. Mr. Dave Dyer is a cornerstone of the village of Russell and an inspiration to us all. Tonight, we honor his incredible contributions to our community with this well-deserved award. Dave's commitment to Russell spans more than 40 years, and during that time, his tireless volunteer efforts have transformed our community into countless ways. Whether it's building programs, leading projects, or rallying others to a shared vision, Dave has always worked with one goal in mind, to make Russell a better place for all. As a director with the Russell Recreational Association, Dave helped bring to life the first ever public tennis court in the village. He also spearheaded successful initiatives to bring outdoor lighting to our ball diamonds and soccer fields, enhancing these spaces and making them a place where families and friends come together. But where Dave's impact is perhaps most widely felt is soccer. He has been and continues to be the beating heart and soul of Russell's soccer movement. Over the years, Dave has helped grow what started as a modest program with 50-some young participants into a thriving organization, serving, I believe, as of last year, 1,725 soccer players, to be exact, over the last season, which is absolutely amazing. So the largest amateur sporting movement in our region. As the president of the Russell Soccer Club and longtime member of its board of directors, Dave dedicated decades of volunteer service to this program, ensuring its success and growth for future generations. Beyond the fields of Russell, Dave's talent has brought him national and even international recognition. His career with Cross Country Canada spanned over 40 years, during which he led programs and events that elevated the sport of cross-country skiing across Canada. He helped develop the Jackrabbit Ski League here in Ontario, organized countless national and international competitions, and even led the efforts behind the groundbreaking Ski Tour Canada 2016. This multi-stage World Cup event showcased Canada to the world and earned us national recognition. While these accomplishments are extraordinary in their own merit, what makes them even more remarkable is that Dave always brought his experience, dedication, and heart back to Russell. Whether as a trustee in the police village of Russell, now a volunteer with the environmental committee, he's always kind of given back to the community. He's consistently shown his great pride for this community. From commemorative street signage to vintage street blades, he has worked tirelessly to honor the history while helping to build our future. And let's not forget the small but meaningful touches that show just how much Dave cares for this village. I'm going to say this, and I probably shouldn't, but every holiday season I've learned that Dave finds himself some volunteers and goes to McDougall Park and adds the Christmas lights there. And I'm not sure if we follow all the safety standards when we do that, but I just heard that through hearsay. Anyways, Dave, your passion, dedication, and ability to inspire others have made Russell a stronger and more connected community. You have not only given us your time and energy, but also set an example for what true volunteerism is all about. On behalf of the Township of Russell and all those whose lives you've touched, we thank you so much. Your commitment to this community and your willingness, using your own words, to roll up your sleeves time and again inspire us all. We're lucky to have people like you who call Russell home, and tonight we celebrate all that you've done and continue to do for our community. Congratulations, Dave, to you and your family on this well-deserved recognition. Thank you so much. Now, before we do the picture, Councillor Lalonde, is there anything you would like to add? Or any members of council, for that matter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very well said. I don't have much to add except to say maybe that, knowing Dave myself personally, moving from Montreal to Russell in '83, I just remember, and it's a theme that carries through all of our years of doing stuff together, that it was always about trying to do something for the community, trying to give something back. And that extended all the way to the decision I made a few years ago to run for council. It was really Dave's push that reminded me that, these are his words, we've been given so much in this community, it seemed appropriate that we should give something back. And I think I'm sitting here now as a councillor because of some of that advice. So I'm grateful to Dave over the years for all of the good advice he gave and the example of the community pride that he's shown to all of us. So thank you.
Councillor. Thank you. Would you like to say one or two words? Please, if you don't mind stepping to the lectern so people at home could hear.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thanks to council and those that have been involved with the nomination process. This is a humbling and I have to admit, somewhat of a surprise, knowing the number of committed volunteers there are in the township. I share a little story, if you don't mind indulging me, but I wasn't sure how to frame this, but as the mayor mentioned, my background is in cross-country skiing, and occasionally when one of the Canadian athletes did exceptionally well, the reporters would ask him how it went today, and you must be very happy. And the skier would say, first off and foremost, well, it was really the team behind me that brought this performance to reality. My wax techs, my physiotherapist, my nutritionist, my coach, and it goes on and on. And I think for me, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize my co-captains in this whole process, my wife Patty and son Alexander. They've been dragged through this, and occasionally they'll hang on to my coattails and say no, but usually it says yes, and they've been in great support and help throughout this process. I'd also like to say that being a volunteer has its true rewards. When we adopt a project, those that are involved in the project tend to bond, and that bonding becomes a friendship, and the stories last a lifetime. And that's what really makes volunteerism worthwhile. And I think I see you all here tonight, and you all share in that sense of volunteerism and what it means to volunteer and the satisfaction we get out of providing support for the community. And I hope that there's always a mechanism where we're allowed to volunteer to help our services, because I think that it's a value to the community, it builds community spirit, and I think it's a very important element for all of us. Now I sort of hear the music in the background.
You're good. I thought that was just in my head.
It's on your phone. And I know there's two young ladies here that have been promised ice cream cones if they've been good, and I think that they've been very good. So again, thanks to the nominating committee, and thank you to my friends who have come out to join us tonight.
So we're going to do a picture, Dave, but before, I forgot to mention that anything you say on that microphone is recorded, and so it is public domain, and we're going to be using that to recruit more volunteers. I hope you're okay with that. Okay, good. All right,
Great.
members of council, we'll go for a picture.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we're moving to item number 9, Délégation Pétition. We have none. Item 10, consent items. So all items listed under the consent items will be enacted by one motion. A majority vote is required for the adoption of the consent items. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a request is made prior to the time to separate discussions of these items. Council votes on the motion that the consent items is to be separated from the motion. The separate items will then be considered immediately after. So motion that all items listed under consent items be received and presented as this is moved by Councillor Lauren, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Call for the vote. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to item number 11, reports and departments and council committees. So item A, recovery of fire services cost report, fire 2025-01. And I will leave that to you, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. Apologize for my throat. So I present to you tonight a report to consider for recovery of fire costs for fire services, specifically to specific items of fire service response, not every item or not every possible response. It's items, how they relate to structures and property of homeowners or building property owners and fire. So we have a presentation from the company Fire Marquee and Mr. Carrier, and I'd like for him to start with the presentation and then questions after that, if it's all right.
Fantastic. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Carrier. You know the drill, I think, if you've sat in these seats. There you go.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council, senior staff and citizens, and those at home. Thank you very much for watching. Firemark began its operations in 2011. Our company was started by a number of seasoned and retired insurance professionals.
Is your mic on?
Yes.
Check. Yeah.
I can.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'll lean real forward. Our company was started in 2011 by a number of retired and semi-retired insurance adjusters at the time, and so we've been in operation now for 13 and a half years. We started with 0 clients. We now have over a third of Ontario's fire departments as clients. We have large urban, City of Kitchener as an example, Cornwall as an example. We have small urban, Town of Collingwood, where I was mayor, as an example, townships, local service boards, and 1 First Nations community. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And there we go. Our program is designed to unlock the insurance coverage. So it's contained in your property insurance policy. So if you check your policy under the additional coverages section, you'll see fire department expense coverage. It's in almost every property policy in Canada. There are some exceptions. Let's say Allstate rental policy, there's no coverage. My father-in-law's cottage, actually, in Chatsworth, Ontario, there was no coverage, but that was because for 5.5 months of the year, you couldn't get a fire truck down the road because there was no winter access, so of course there was no fire department expense coverage. But almost every property insurance policy has coverage. There's 196 insurance companies operating in Canada coast to coast to coast, so the coverages will vary from $1,000, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000. My home in Collingwood, Ontario is insured with Aviva, and it's actually unlimited fire department coverage. Next slide, please. We have seen a number of insurance companies increase the coverage over the last 13 and a half years. Some of the smaller mutuals have gone from $1,000 to $3,000. Some have increased it to $5,000. Some of the farm coverages have increased from $1,000 to $5,000. And Intact, which is aggressively trying to buy up some farm insurance companies, has increased the coverage to $25,000. Next slide, please. The Insurance Bureau of Canada publishes what they call the Fact Book. They've been doing it prior to 2014. They publish it every year. You'll find in one of the sections that they tell you how they establish what premium rate you're going to be. So if you're, say, with cooperators will pool the risk of all of the policyholders of cooperators that they have in their portfolio. And then along with covering claim costs, premiums are calculated to cover taxes, operating expenses, and expected profits. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The City of Thunder Bay did a rather thorough exam of our program. Large urban, as you may or may not know, has the ability to make a long process of the decision-making process by reviewing in detail a number of programs. So they did with ours as well. Next slide. In this case, what they were concerned about is what we hear from a lot of decision makers. Are the policies, or is this program going to cause an increase to our citizens if they make a claim against their policy? First of all, if they don't make a claim, we close the file. We piggyback on their claims process. But you don't have to take my word for it. You can take the City of Thunder Bay's word for it once more. They actually went out and talked to 10 different other municipalities to see if there was any premium risk, increased risk to their stakeholders, and there was not. So before they made that decision, and they've been a long-term client since 2017, and they've been a very good client. Next slide, please. This is a small mutual, actually, from Eastern Ontario, and they had raised a concern with some of their stakeholders as to whether or not our program would cause an increase. And so, like all institutions, they actually publish their financials on the internet. And so I was able to pull this up and did a presentation for members of council and some concerned citizens. So here they had 18.8 million in underwriting income. They had direct losses that year of 10,713,000, of which only 3 insured perils were covered. And that only represented $3,000 because they had limited coverage of $1,000. And we only recover to the limits of the coverage. So the policyholder is not out of pocket any money. We only get from the insurance company that which is covered. That represented 0.028 of 1%. So that insurer was telling their policyholders, who were then talking to the politicians and saying, 10,710,000 is okay, but 10,713,000 is going to cause a premium increase. There's no way. Inflation is driving premium increases. So the cost to replace your home, the cost to replace the contents. The fire department coverage is a fixed coverage. So in 2014, the cooperator's coverage was $5,000. In 2025, it's $5,000. In 2030, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's going to be $5,000. There's no inflationary pressure against this particular line item, and as established by the Insurance Bureau of Canada, they've already forecasted that they should be paying out on it. It's like your budget process. If you forecasted that you should be paying out on or expending dollars in a certain line item, then you should be expending dollars in a certain line item. You don't get to charge people with a zero line item for something that doesn't exist. Once more. I even went further than that. I pulled up the superintendent of insurance report from that particular year. You can see that there's 26,359 policyholders where all the risk is shared. Once more. And that represents 11 cents a policy. So if there's a risk of our program increasing it, which there's not, well, how much is it going to go up to cover that risk? This is a tiny portion of the overall premium. There is no risk. And I'll go one line further. Almost all insurance companies take their property portfolios and they reinsure them. There is a line item on their financial statements that you will see that they've bought reinsurance to cover off certain losses. And in this particular case, I was able to demonstrate that this particular insurance company was reimbursed. There was no loss, and there will be no loss, and there is no risk for premium increases due to our program. Next line, or next slide, please. The program kicks in only after an incident. Next slide. And this is essentially the simplified process. The fire chief fills out a standard incident report. That's what we would like a copy of. We would like a copy of the scene release form and an initial summary report form. They send that to us. The average recovery is 14 weeks. The shortest recovery has been 8 days, and the longest recovery has been 42 months. The incident that was 42 months was a non-residential fire, and our program is designed not to hurt the policyholder in any way. It doesn't take any monies away that they're entitled to, and it's also deductible exclusionary. But in that non-residential fire, there was a basket of coverages, so we had to wait through that process to ensure that the policyholder got all of the funds that they were entitled to before we were able to recover for our client, and we still recovered $34,000 in fire department expenses for our client. You receive 70% of the funds that are recovered. We retain 30% for ourselves. If there is no recovery, there is no cost. If the chief is unsure that it's a recoverable incident and we review the file, there is no cost. There's no annual, there's no minimum. The only time that our company receives compensation is if you receive compensation. Next slide, please. There's a number of fire chiefs across the country. It's fun to drop off checks. As a former mayor, I can tell you that I don't have to make an appointment when I'm dropping off a check. Somebody's always willing to come out of a meeting to take a check. I also know that the fire department budgets are under significant pressure, inflationary pressure. So any type of cost recovery or revenue source that we can bring to them, we're happy to do so. And it gives me, as a former elected official, a lot of pleasure to do that. Happy to answer any questions or concerns you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carrier. Anything to add, Chief, from your perspective before we go to the questions?
Not at this time, Your Worship.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. So first of all, are there any competitors in the marketplace of what you do?
No.
Okay.
This was something where the founders of our company are also internationally licensed catastrophic adjusters. So those are specialized adjusters who were called to natural catastrophes. They were down on incident in the United States, and there were some bills being submitted for this, and they started looking at the American policies, and the coverage was there. And then they started looking at the Canadian policies, and the coverage was there. And they realized there was no municipalities in the country that were claiming this expense to which they were entitled to receive. So they decided to start planning for their retirements.
No, my question was in relation to the commission piece. So there's no room to negotiate is what you're saying, right?
So what I'm saying is all of our clients, it's a 70-30 split. So
the same.
if it's a city of 500,000 people, or if it's a local service board of 200 people, it's all 70-30.
Okay. Great. Any impact on workload, Chief, from your end?
Thank you for the question, Your Worship. It's not going to be a heavy workload. It's just one additional paperwork that we'd have to send over to them. We have to complete the incident reports as part of our fire marshal reporting anyways. So we just have to put everything in the format that the fire marquee would require to process.
Okay. And in going through the process and analyzing the value of this particular agreement, have we estimated a potential benefit for the fire department, for the municipality here? I'm looking at either
Oh,
or.
sorry, I didn't know if you were directing the question at me.
No, it doesn't matter.
It really just depends upon the number of insured peril incidents that you have. So there's 13 different insured perils, but structure fires are the most easily identifiable. And then it will depend upon the coverage of 196 insured. So we don't try to project.
Okay.
But similar sized municipalities have seen anywhere from $8,000 a year, and then you've seen that municipality that received $34,000
Okay.
is the same size as yours.
Fantastic. Okay, and then just reiterate one more time, although you have said it multiple times, I just want to reiterate, there is no risk to premiums for our residents?
Correct. There is zero risk that our program is going to cause a premium increase.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions, members of council? Councillor Armstrong?
Yeah, I've got a bit of a concern in that I have no argument with actually recovering costs from to the municipality from responding to an incident. I've got no problem with that. It's the question of, as a municipality, do we impose that only on people who are insured or properties that are insured, or do we try to recover as well from properties that are uninsured? that's just the fairness, whether somebody takes a risk and doesn't insure the property, and somebody does, the cost to the municipality is the same. The fire department's expenses don't change if those two properties are the same and they see the same loss. Should we be imposing it on a across-the-board basis? And then if we recover it from the insurance, that's great. I mean, that's easy for the property owner. But is it fair to do it just for those who are insured?
So can I just ask for clarification? Are you asking that if we consider this, we should be charging everyone recovery costs regardless of their insurance status?
Yes, that's what
Okay.
I'm saying.
Okay. I'm not sure I would agree with that direction, but Councillor Lauren?
But we're not charging a recovery
No.
cost, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're not charging a recovery cost. You're putting a claim through, and you're receiving funds from the insurance company, but we're not charging a cost. We're receiving funds at a 70-30 split, according to this program, on insurable amounts within each individual policy, should they be insured.
Through the mayor to the
Mr. Cook.
councillor, correct. We are recovering what the policyholder has paid for this coverage. So it really becomes a binary choice. The policyholder is not entitled to the funds. The fire department is. You're the one that's incurred the expense. So the insurance company can keep it, or your fire department can receive the costs. So we've
clear.
designed the program to recover those costs to ensure that the insurer is actually honoring the coverage for which the policyholder has paid. And I've pointed out maybe around Easter time and Christmas time, like when was the last time you went into the grocery store and you bought stuff and put it in a special basket for those who are less fortunate at the end? And how would you feel if you looked through the window and saw them restocking the shelves at the end of the day with the stuff that you bought
Yeah.
and paid for a specific purpose? The policyholder has paid for this coverage. The fire service is entitled to receive it. You should be receiving it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, members of council? Councillor Deakin.
I can see how this would be helpful for a smaller municipality such as ours in terms of operationalizing doing this ourselves, for example. It sounds very onerous. But I was surprised that the presenter mentioned larger municipalities as well taking this on. Are the really big players like City of Toronto, Montreal doing it themselves? It's a curious
Mr.
question
Carey?
that I have.
Not yet. So the City of Thunder Bay, as an example, I'm not talking out of turn because it's a public document, but in 2019, the City of Thunder Bay was supposed to buy a pump and rescue truck. Council decided to delay the purchase until last year. And last year, when they went to go through the procurement process, it was $438,000 higher in cost than it was in 2019. The shortfall was not made up from debt financing. It was not made up from reserves. It was made up from funds that were recovered by Firemark that the City of Thunder Bay had been saving. So there's a real example, and you can check with the City of Thunder Bay Fire Chief. The report's public. I can even send it to you. But that shortfall was saved up, and they really used it for the fire service. The monies stay within the fire service budget. The Supreme Court of Canada in 1998 and then 2005 expanded upon what definition of defining the difference between a fee and a tax. And so taxes, as you know, property taxes can go to anywhere in your budget. A fee is for a product or a service provided by a department. And so the monies that are recovered are fire department expense, so the monies recovered stay within their budget.
Thank you. Follow up, Councillor Deakin.
Thank you. That's a very powerful story. I think I was unclear in my question, though. When I mean doing it themselves, I mean recuperating those indemnification costs. Claims. excuse me.
So just a sec. So just to clarify, so what you're asking is
Like
if
having
we would do it and
internal-
keep the 100%, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm just
Okay.
wondering if there have
Sure.
been larger municipalities who are setting themselves up in shop to do it themselves.
No.
Mr. Carey, okay.
A lot of the larger urban within their treasury departments do have insurance adjusters on staff. I'll use the city of Oshawa as an example. but they are the legal liability slips and falls specialists. You probably get a summary of the various lawsuits that you might be going through or potential claims at the end of the calendar year. That's their specialty. Our company, our insurance adjusters, retired adjusters, are property insurance specialists. They've recognized that instead of expanding the staff expertise in-house, that it's actually more cost-effective to farm it out.
Thank you. Councillor Councillor Lauren.
So this is a question for Mr. Godet, possibly Mr. Dagenet, is understanding that the cost or the recoveries would stay within the fire services budget, and you gave a significant example of cost for capital expenses like a fire truck. I guess, and I don't know if you'd have the answer to this, but what impact would that have from a budgetary perspective when we talk about development charges and what's the other one that I was looking at that we plan for every, I'm pretty sure it's development charges, where we're taking into account the growth and the amount of funds recovered on certain things like fire services, where we're putting away money for fire trucks and whatnot, and how this may impact that as well. Have we thought about that aspect of it?
Monsieur Godet.
Merci, Monsieur Maire. Good evening, members of council. That's a great question. So that would depend on the amount of revenue we would collect per year, which is very hard to determine. At the end of the day, I don't anticipate we would necessarily budget or forecast receiving 10,000 or 15,000 per year necessarily, because it could be up a year, it could be down a year. But anything that we do collect is, if it does anything, it's going to help those plans. It wouldn't necessarily impact the development charges per se, because I think those are really specific and mandated regarding the growth piece. But for sure, for our fleet replacement plan or asset management plans, it's all revenues that could be council could decide to allocate those revenues to those reserves or any other strategy that could be come up with.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions, members of council? No, thank you very much, Mr. Carey. Appreciate your time, and hope you enjoy your stay while you're here with us.
Thank you. I'm here till tomorrow morning and then making my way back to Collingwood. But thank you for this opportunity to be here today and speak with you. And as a former elected official, I always like to thank elected officials for their public service. So thank you.
Thank you
very
so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, moving to item 11B. Demande de modification au règlement de zonage, suppression du symbole d'aménagement différé, rapport PD 2025-08. Anything to add, Monsieur Bourgault? Nothing. Questions and comments, members of council? Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I'm looking at the actual report, and the draft plan of subdivision comes to mind. It's showing in the draft plan of subdivision an area to the immediate east of McDonald. In other words, the great big huge field between, I guess it's Bulls or Dentrex and McDonald is the subdivision. But the western half of that area is being shown on the map. Is that actually part of this subdivision that we have? Because it doesn't show in the United Counties official plan as being part of the settlement area.
Thank you. Monsieur Bourgault?
Merci, Monsieur Maire. So there's an empty field in between the proposed subdivision and McDonald Road, which you're right, it's not inside the urban boundaries. So the proposed or the subdivision we're discussing tonight, it's really within the settlement area of Russell. So
Okay.
not directly east of McDonald, but
Okay, so
down
so
the
we're only talking about those areas that are in the Boulder, not down the next drawing. If we can go down the next drawing on the yes. So we're talking about only the area that's in the Boulder markings drawing right there.
yes.
Okay. My next question, if I could go on,
Please
Mr.
go ahead.
Mayor, is on the very next drawing. And I see that it is a proposal to move from R3H holding and R2 holding to R3 exception 45, exceptions 58. What are those exceptions?
Monsieur Bourgon?
Merci, Monsieur Mayor. I don't have the specific of those exemption, but there were changes in the setbacks. Those are row houses proposed, and the proponent asked for some changes in the zoning, which was approved at some point last fall, so in 2024.
Councillor Lauren?
Just for clarification, the exceptions have already been approved. It's just today's, the request is to remove the holding symbol to allow them to access water and sewer services, correct?
That's correct.
So we're not adding any exceptions by doing this?
No, your Councillor Lorrain is right. The exemptions were already approved
Thank you.
last fall.
Anything
Okay,
else?
thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, members of council? Thank you. Moving to item C, 2025 interim tax levies report, CSAS FS 2025-01. Anything to add, Monsieur Dagenet? Nothing, thank you. Questions, comments, members of council for item C? Seeing none. Thank you. We'll move to item D. Lettre d'intention pour le contrôle automatisé de la vitesse rapport PIC 2025-09. Anything to add? Sorry. Madame Bordeaux, excusez-moi. Comme je pensais en français, puis ça marche pas des fois. Quelque chose à rajouter, Madame Bordeaux?
Yes, well, this is a report, as stated, it's a letter of intent showing the township's intention to proceed with the LAS to view the possibilities of speed radar in the township of Russell.
So photo radar within the township. So everyone's had a chance to review this. I think I'd be interested in hearing from council on this. I know that we have talked about speeding. This will definitely have a good positive impact on the speeding. I do have concerns a little bit on the business case that was presented in terms of the numbers. I feel it's two aspects to it that concern me. Is one is the numbers that they're presenting in there seem to be, yes, maybe that's the amount of traffic that goes by, but we're a small community, and once they know there's photo radars, I'm assuming that that would drop substantially. So the numbers that we would get back is one thing I'm concerned about, and two, the costs that come with it versus the numbers we get back. For me, if we can accomplish this and break even, I think it's great. I'm just not 100% convinced. And so I would love to get feedback from other members of council. Having said that, we are only, we're not agreeing to anything here. We're just saying that we're interested in it. Correct, Madame Bordeaux?
Yes, and I did point out to our clerk that I made a few changes on the letter that if you direct me to sign, I did make a few changes. So instead of stating that it's a letter of intent for installation, I changed it to further explore the establishment of an automated speed enforcement radar.
Okay.
So I made that change in the letter just so we don't
Or committing to,
anything, and we're just exploring it further, and I can, because we will have to present bylaws for the AP, which is the monetary penalty for the speed radars. So we will have to bring back to council some items in relation to this, and hopefully we have a better view of all the costs. I have pretty much all the costs, I believe, but I'm new at this, and I'm trying to get everything lined up so we don't have any surprises.
I know for me, in a perfect world, I'd love to see another case of a smaller community like ours that doesn't have a major throughway, like say Clarence Rockland, where they have Highway 17, and I know it has to be within a community safety zone, but they're able, I believe, to do that on the highway. I'd love to be able to see what it looks like within a community like ours before committing to it. That's just my personal opinion, but I'd love to hear from council members on that. Councillor Armstrong?
My big question is, in gathering the statistics, I'm assuming we gathered the statistics using those speed radars that display your speed as you approach the radar.
Madame Bordeaux? Just to answer that.
Monsieur Bourgon could help me out on that, but I believe it's the lines, the
strips?
The
strips.
pneumatic strips across the,
Yes, so
Okay.
it gathers the speed, and the company that took the statistics took into effect what they see elsewhere, because there are a few communities in the area of Barrie that have, and I will try to find smaller communities who use the speed radar, but they say that they took into account the factors that there's a lot of people that will follow the speed limit, knowing that there is a speed radar. So they did go with what the statistics show elsewhere.
Okay, thank you.
my next question is, the other assumption, I was wrong in my first one, so I may be wrong in this one too, was that the actual speed detection was determined in the intended zone where the speed radar would be installed.
Yes, they were placed in the school zone and community safety zone. And the stats that you see here, we're missing 2 zones.
Okay, thank you.
That's fine, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Deacon?
I understand that the business case is coming together, and I can appreciate we have that $13 per notice, and then we have pieces that are not yet in that figure. But I just wanted to take a step back and understand from the start of it, what is it that LAS specifically does? Because we are looking at, the processing center in Clarence Rockland, the officers that will be working out of there. Is LAS the technology and the setup and ownership, movement, et cetera, of the technology and the signage?
Madame Bordeaux?
LAS, they pay the officers that will be at the processing center, so all the cost of the processing center
Oh, okay,
is done through LAS.
okay.
There's also an AP program for these fines, so there's also the speed radar themselves. They came in, I guess they come in to AMO for numerous projects like that. I'm not quite sure how they're involved in all these projects, but I know that
I can add to that as far as LES goes. So LES is a sub-entity of AMO, and they're put in place to put programs to help out municipalities for different initiatives. And this here is speed enforcement, but they also have programs for on the energy side to have some energy efficient projects, or we've used them. They have some investment programs that are geared towards the requirements of municipalities, where we can't just invest in anything we want, but through LAS they have different programs to help us maximize our investments. So they're really an organization that's there to respond to municipal needs and to put programs together there.
Great. Councillor Deacon, follow up?
So just to say, it's a subsidiary of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and I have seen their work and other things that they do, but just so that we're clear, this is not, I'm assuming that this is the only organization in Ontario that's serving municipalities in this way. There aren't other vendors or organizations that we could be working with?
Monsieur Godin, Madame Bordeaux?
I'm not aware. I know larger cities have their own processing centers.
And I believe Clarence Rockland is opening a processing center for this, and so
For LES.
Yeah, for LAS, yeah. But, yeah, so are there other companies that we are aware of?
I'm not aware of any.
Councillor Lauren?
I'm just trying to understand the cost implications here. So if I look at the I'm trying to understand the revenue generation piece to the counties. I guess it would be all direct costs, all the direct revenue to the township after we after we refund the amount to the court,
No,
to provincial offenses.
no. It doesn't go to the court.
Okay, so of the $90, let's say the average $90 cost, 13 goes to administration and whatnot, like you said. The other 77 stays directly with our municipality.
Madame Bordeaux?
There are other costs. The cost for the cameras, for either purchase or rental, which is approximately $3,500 a month per camera.
Yeah, it's $252,000 a year for the cameras, $3,500 a month times 6 cameras.
No, we
Three.
wouldn't put 6, we would only put two
Two,
cameras
yeah.
at this time and then move them around as necessary.
Moving them is $7,000 each time.
So we move, what they suggest is we don't move them sooner than at least 4 months, but better 6 months, so you keep them in one spot for at least 4 months. Because you have to put the signage up 3 months ahead of time also. That's in the regulation.
Okay, so of the average of $90, 13 is taken out right from the top. Where does the other 77 go?
Well,
look.
there's the charge for the software for the administrative penalty, which is about $3 per notice or fine. There's also the Ministry of Transport for the search, so they charge us. But that we can recover that when to the owner of that vehicle. So the other costs are for signage, the moving of the cameras, and administrative costs. Like we're gonna have more administration in our office because nothing goes to court. So the initial, how it works is the photo is taken, the processing center gets the information, and they send the bill to the person who owns that vehicle. The person gets the bill, they can either pay it or dispute it, so we need a screening officer, so that is part of your expense. So the screening officer hears the case, gives a verdict, they're not happy, they can go to a hearing officer, so we have to have a hearing officer. So the hearing officer is part of our expense, and that's it.
Are those are those positions shared with Clarence Rockland?
No.
Like here, so it would be township specific.
Yes, I have been able to deal with certain individuals who have experience in prosecution and they have background, and they're prepared to do like per case or half a day and deal with a bunch of cases. So it wouldn't be extravagant, and it wouldn't be full-time.
Okay. Anything else, Councillor Lauren?
There's a lot, but
That's okay. I understand. It's a lot.
I get the moving forward. I don't have a problem with that. I'm just trying to understand the realities of the entire program, the cost, the revenue, and how they offset, right? We're talking, 350,000 infractions that we observed, if I'm reading this correctly, and there's only be processing of 70,000 of those types of infractions, because 35,000 per person per year, 70,000 at $90 is 6.3 million. Is, take out the $13 per, and now you're down to 5.4 million. Now, I'm assuming, where does the rest of that money go? Does it all stay within the municipality, or do we have to pay a piece of that pie to the province? Do we keep the entire $5.4 million? Like, I'm just trying to understand how that's going to work.
Monsieur Godin, Madame Bordeaux.
Well, as indicated, the costs that I've identified up to now, and that's why I want to have more information from LAS, but they won't give us information until
We show the interest.
we show the interest.
Councillor Deacon?
So just going back to the purpose of this, I am supportive of us taking a next step with exploring automated speed enforcement. I believe that it can have a huge impact on people's safety in our community, and that matters a great deal to me. My understanding from my questions earlier was that LAS would be the partner to look at exploring this further with, because there are no other options. And for me, that's what I need to know tonight in order to move forward with that. Looking at it says, at the agenda here, it says, intent to work with LAS service, blah, 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 to establish an automated speed enforcement program. Can I just get clarity that that is what is being proposed to be amended, to explore rather than establish? Was that the change?
Madame Bordeaux, can you please confirm the change on your letter, please?
How that would
Yes.
read?
So the subject at the beginning, is that what you're referring to?
Just under item D, it always gives us that little instruction to council that we receive.
C'est sur l'écran en haut.
Ouais.
Ouais.
Okay, so what I've changed it to is subject letter of intent to further explore the establishment of automated speed enforcement radar.
Okay, thank you.
So that's good. Councillor Armstrong?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of speed cameras. I prefer a more passive method. We have bollards in some places. We have speed humps in other places. I would be willing to go along with this if, when we finally want to approve things, we have all of the data about the effectiveness of this, plus the effectiveness of other measures that may be applicable in these areas. And obviously, in Russell, with the schools concentrated there, speeding is a big issue. We're going to have a new school there. We're going to have more kids on that street. This is certainly something very important that we get control of, is excessive speed. What's the best way is my question, and I'd like to see all of those things before I make a final decision.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'll summarize what I believe to understand. Councillor Lauren?
Yeah, I'll just add to what I just heard is, we can have marked car there once every 3 weeks. That'll slow down the cars for an hour, hour and a half. They may give 4 or 5 tickets to people that are speeding through. It's not a deterrent, and that's the problem that I see, is there's not a deterrent to doing it. I can tell you, receiving a letter in the mail from an automated speed enforcement in a certain area is a deterrent, and I personally would support this type of a program so that people do slow down. When you start hitting them in the pocketbook for recklessness on the road, that can be avoided. That'll lessen the accident rate and save most of these are in school zones, so potentially save lives. of kids. I think it's important to look at every option available to us, and this is one of them. And you know, we see them in Ottawa. I think they're up to 54 different cameras in different locations, and I can tell you I am absolutely not looking at this from a monetary component, although I'd like to know what that is exactly. I don't want to guess, because I would definitely want to be directing funds at that point to safety and security and other measures, not looking at it to fund other programs and stuff like that. So I definitely think this is something that we should explore. Number one thing, walking the campaign trail, is speed in our community. And if this helps reduce the speed, I think it's important. So speed, safety, obviously, is what is key there. And, you know, are people going to be happy with it? Absolutely not. And you know what? At this point, I'm okay with that. You know why? Because they shouldn't be speeding in those areas. There's a reason why there's a 40 zone. It's because there are vulnerable people that are either walking or taking a bus, or there's kids crossing the street, especially during those times. So I have no problem with this, and I look forward to seeing a full case study on it to show us exactly the benefits of it, to ensure that we have that additional information available to us. Because right now, still very high level numbers when you start to just put it all together. So I'd like to see more,
Thank
but
you.
I'm in favor of it going forward.
Thank you, Alain. So if I could summarize, and members of council, please feel free to jump in if I'm missing anything. So in terms of moving forward, I think in principle everyone's in agreement. We would like, before the next next time this comes back to council, to understand, one, is this the only organization that does that? I think Councillor Deakin was talking about that. Or is this the only option for us in terms of this type of partnership? I think the other aspect was to truly understand the effectiveness of this versus other speed deterrent programs that are out there. So we're talking about physical deterrents that we already use in some of the designs and so on, and just to really understand the impact. And I think item number 3 was to review with other municipalities in terms of the numbers provided versus reality, and if at all possible, to get some sort of community that's kind of representative of what we look like in terms of our community safety zones and so on. And so I think that having that understanding and truly good kind of feasibility study, financial, most importantly, is that it doesn't lose money, and then to understand the true effect that it will have. Does that make sense? Did I capture that correctly, members of council? Yeah, thank you. OK, Madame Bourdeau, c'est bon? OK, merci beaucoup. Alors, on avance. Item E, Community Improvement Plan, CIP Villages of Emblem and Russell Report EcoDev 2025-01. So we had a presentation last week, I believe, at the planning meeting, so some questions were asked. Anything to add, Monsieur Dagenet?
Bonsoir, chers membres du Conseil. I'm very pleased to bring forward this updated version of the Community Improvement Plan program for the Village of Embrun and Russell for your approval tonight. As you may have noticed while reviewing the report, the administration has been working closely with GL Richard and Associates over the past couple of years to update this CIP for the village core of Embrun and Russell. We've put a lot of effort into improving this program to make it easier to understand, simpler to apply for, and more straightforward to manage. In response to the rising construction costs over the past few years, we've also made the grant amount more attractive, now offering up to $20,000 per application. In addition to these changes, we've modified the funding approach for this new version of the program. Unlike the previous model, where the reserve was replenished through the budget process and general taxation, future tax revenues from property improvement that qualify for the tax increment grant will now be used to fund this reserve. This new method ensures that each property receiving a tax increment grant through our CIP will contribute double the grant amount back to the reserve. With this strategy, we will not only be able to support ongoing community improvement projects, but also build funds to finance the next program update in 5 to 10 years. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Dagenet. I've got a couple of questions. So first of all, in terms of the architectural engineering design grant, if I receive my money, maybe up to $20,000, because I paid for half to get those designs, and I decide not to pursue the renovation or the project, is there a risk where we would lose that investment? Because the idea is that we're investing and we'll get it back in increased value of the property, and we'll get it back in tax value. So that makes sense to me. But because now we are paying up to $20,000 or up to 50% of the, I think grant up to 50% of the 20K of the design cost of the engineering, if the proponent decides not to move forward with the renovation, even though we've given them money for this grant, are we at risk for that? Est-ce que ça a du sens ce que je vous demande, non?
Oui, bien, nous, la façon qu'on veut financer la réserve, c'est... dans le dernier 10 ans, on a ramassé des statistiques, puis à peu près un tiers des octrois qu'on a offerts au travers du CIP, que les entrepreneurs ont pu avoir des crédits ou de l'aide sur leur augmentation de taxes. Fait en faisant cette analyse-là, on a pu réaliser que ces projets-là ont rapporté pour la municipalité entre 10 000 à 40 000 $ de plus de revenus de taxation par année. Donc, nous n'avons aucun problème de dire que dans le futur, si on est capable d'aller chercher, si on est capable de prendre ces revenus de taxation-là pour renflouer notre réserve, elle va être capable de compenser pour les octrois qu'on a offerts pour des plus petits projets. C'est l'entrepreneur qui veut juste changer son affiche, bien lui, il ne va pas avoir d'augmentation de taxation future, il ne va pas avoir d'augmentation de valeur à sa propriété. Donc, lui, on ne va pas pouvoir user l'augmentation de taxation future pour rembourser la réserve. Fait que ça va être seulement les plus gros projets, puis...
Non, je comprends, mais je parle spécifiquement de l'octroi qui est relié au plan de design. Parce que dans le passé, on avait une limite, et puis maintenant, la limite n'est plus là. On est prêt à payer jusqu'à 50% du design d'un projet. Fait que si j'ai mon magasin, je veux faire une rénovation, puis là, je veux faire un design, fait que là, la municipalité va me donner, je ne sais pas moi, 5 000, 10 000 $ pour mes plans, mais je décide de ne pas aller de l'avant du projet.
Okay.
Fait que là, dans le fond, la municipalité a payé. Moi aussi, j'ai payé pour mes plans, c'est sûr, mais la municipalité ne va pas rien recevoir en retour au niveau d'amélioration de valeur. Est-ce que ça, c'est un risque?
Bien, pour moi, comment je le comprenais, c'est que le projet, fallait qu'il soit finalisé pour qu'on rembourse.
Avant qu'on rembourse. OK. Du moment que c'est clair, ça serait juste à s'assurer que ça, c'est clair.
Oui.
Moi, c'était mon seul risque que je voyais là-dedans. À part de ça, c'est logique de mon côté. Councillor Lauren?
No, that was just the explanation I was going to give, because the first explanation wasn't answering the question that you
Yes,
were
ma'am.
asking. So it's it's a reimbursement program after completion of the work that's been done.
Yes.
So they can't apply like at the beginning. And
Except that in this case, we're saying that the architectural projects, the plan is the work being done. So we're willing to finance or to pay for that 50% of it. So once that's done, someone could argue, hey, it says that you're paying for 50%. I finished it. Can you give me the money on it? So as long as you're telling me that we're protected against that, I'm comfortable with that, but just need to make sure of that.
I'll confirm that.
Okay, merci. Any other questions? Councillor Deacon?
It sort of is referring to your comment as well a design is not an outcome. It's not going to bring more value to our taxation, right? So I totally understand that. I was looking at some other CIPs for other municipalities that don't disperse the funds until an MPAC assessment is done. And I was wondering if that had been considered by administration or if that is actually part of it already,
Great question.
especially for those larger amounts. So you get your designs, that's great. Once your project is actually completed and assessed, then you'll see those funds to kick back to those designs.
Monsieur Dagenet?
We give out the grant when the project is done. As for the tax increment credit, that's there needs to be an increase of at least $25,000 of the value, the assessment value. So to be able to apply and get that credit, we need to reevaluate your property. So it'll be done after.
Any other questions? Councillor Lalonde.
Thank you. It's maybe some comments more so than questions. My understanding is we're working from the reserve fund amount in terms of the money we can play with from year to year that can be spent on this. So right now, if I understand, it's something around $70,000, $80,000 or $90,000 that might be in the reserve right now, just to clarify that. But that's part of the comment or the question. I worry a little bit over, I know it's all about improving storefront and attracting business and increasing taxation, property values, and the return on investment that provides. And I get that. It's just that then I look at, I want to be careful what I say here, but then I look at some of the businesses that could apply that happen to be banks, institutions in our area, franchise operations that are, some are multinationals, the others are nationals. And I look at some of the larger groups or companies, what have you, in the community, and I say to myself today, and some of the projects they're undertaking are very significant. It's to wonder whether the money that's being offered here was even needed on their part. I mean, we have banking institutions that make $500 million quarterly in profits. And if they should decide to change the front of the lending institution to improve access or change the look of the building, I'm at a loss to see why it is the money would go to that particular group. Recognizing, too, that if it's 70 or 80 grand, it can go out the door pretty fast. And those who are maybe the larger size are handier at putting in applications and what have you. Leaving less money behind for maybe the, comme je les appelle moi, les petites et moyennes entreprises, les PME. Moi, j'aimerais, en tout cas, comme je dis, c'est un commentaire, c'est pas des questions, mais c'est des commentaires parce que je trouve que l'argent, elle n'est pas signifiante au point de vue de montant. Et moi, j'aimerais m'assurer que les PME ont des bonnes chances d'y arriver, surtout, j'espère en tout cas, en avant de ceux qui sont dans certains cas, des multinationales, même dans notre communauté, et je les comprends. S'il y a de l'argent disponible, why wouldn't they go get it, like anybody else? But so I just leave that out as a comment. If maybe staff want to comment back to me on that and reassure me, I appreciate it.
Merci. Bien, premièrement, c'est un maximum de 20 000 par octroi. Et puis, en ce moment, on a une réserve, mais on a aussi budgété cette année. On n'a pas budgété le montant que l'administration a demandé au complet, si je me souviens bien. Mais on met de l'argent dans le pont en ce moment, right?
Dans le budget 2025, il n'y a eu aucun ajout.
OK.
On est en train de passer, de passer qu'est-ce qu'il y avait dans la réserve, qu'est-ce qui a été déjà approuvé dans le passé. Mais avec cette nouvelle façon de financer le programme, c'est pour ça qu'on n'a pas été plus loin là, avec l'idée de mettre des fonds dans le budget 2025 à cause qu'on avait quand même une bonne autre stratégie. Là. Puis pour venir à ton point, conseiller Lalonde, c'est si je regarde le passé, on n'est pas arrivé à des points où on a dû refuser des gens pour des octrois. Je pense même en 2023, il y en a eu je pense une demande. Fait que, tu sais, peut-être dans le futur, c'est quelque chose à considérer, que si jamais le programme devient trop populaire ou il y a trop de demandes par année. Là. Mais là, nous, le CIP est capé à 100 000 par année, donc s'il y a 5 compagnies qui demandent pour 20 000, bien, on va pouvoir aider 5 compagnies dans l'année.
Merci beaucoup. C'est bon? Conseiller Laurent?
And similar to the community grants program that we have, we always have the ability to come back to council, and if there's a project that you feel is something to be funded, I'm sure that you finance guys can look in different reserves and see where money could be reallocated for these types of projects. So I don't have any concern from that perspective. Again, you know, we have a community grants program that's kind of similar to the CIP program. So,
Thank you. Councillor Deakin?
I understand some of Councillor Lalonde's concerns about, you know, the township hasn't had to say no to anyone yet, and the amounts are increasing exponentially, so, and with the hope that more businesses will apply and that the programs will be more active and impactful. I take his point that if there ever were a point where we were looking at a limit to what could be provided in a year, I do take his point that it would be concerning if those grantees that were selected, you know, first come, first serve. It's often the privileged that benefit from that sort of a system. And those that are privileged by being part of multinational companies would likely have that privilege to apply sooner than later. And so I'm just wondering if there's a mechanism for us as council to be briefed if that does become the case, if we're looking at this not as part of our budget, because it's about those funds coming back through tax increment. How will we be informed about how the program is going and if there are any adjustments to be made,
Monsieur
given those
Dagenet?
concerns?
Monsieur Dagenet, on va avoir des rapports réguliers sur les projets qui viennent à la municipalité.
Oui, ben on peut apporter un rapport, ça, pendant le budget, ou on peut rapporter un rapport annuel dans un an. Ça pourrait être quelque chose de régulier, qu'on vous donne une mise à jour sur les octrois qu'on a offerts l'année d'avant. Puis, si on a refusé, ben là, on pourrait peut-être expliquer un peu, OK, c'est quoi les stratégies qu'on peut mettre en place pour pouvoir aider tout le monde. Ou, en tout cas, c'est...
Merci. Conseiller Deakin, follow-up?
Thanks. And just to be more precise too, it would be about being unable to provide the grant because of the uptake rather than refusing a grant application that did not qualify. We just want to make sure that those that come in with great projects, locally owned and operated businesses, that we're going to be there for them to support them in those projects.
I think, as Councillor Lauren alluded to, I think we always have the opportunity, and I guess maybe what we can ask from staff is if we do get a position where we have spent all the money for that given year and we have a good application in front of us, it is something you would come to council with. Is it fair to say?
Oui.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, merci. And also, just to clarify, I think if we, just speaking in terms of, Councillor Lalonde, you had mentioned franchises. A lot of the franchises are local owners as well, so I just want to make sure that we distinguish that. They're not necessarily baking in or basking in the glory of the success of that particular brand yet, I'm thinking of Pizza as an example. It's a work 6 days a week kind of ownership. So, all right. Anything else on this, Councillor Armstrong?
Just can I have it confirmed that I'm right here? The Municipal Act general rule prohibits municipalities from subsidizing for-profit enterprises, except within certain parameters that are designed not to favor any one business over another. Am I correct in that?
Monsieur Dagenet? Monsieur Godin?
You're correct. Excuse me. So there are clauses in the Municipal Act where it does say you can't, there's no bonusing, right? But there are ways to not work around that, but to develop programs such as this one, such as a CIP that can, I don't know the specific clauses of it, but the consultant that was worked with here has had access to that.
And
the idea is to build a program within our
Yeah.
requirements.
So, as we've said, we would, if we have something that we want to, we think is good, and we've hit our limit, can always come back and up the limits that we have. And that would be within the scope of what the Municipal Act has
Yeah, we would
has
have to
given us.
ensure that we're within that scope. Absolutely. You're 100% correct. And CIPs are a tool that's used by many, if not all, or certainly the large majority of municipalities and different size of programs. Councillor Lauren, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I should know this, but when you get a request, is it approved through your department, or does it come to council for formal approval of the program?
Monsieur Dagenet?
It's approved by the EcoDev department. It does not go to council.
Thank you.
Okay, so, we talk about transparency and we talk about how much money is left in the programs and stuff like that. And, I equate this program similarly to our community grants program. And the community grants program has a mandate to come back to council for approval. And even when they reject an application, it still has to come to council. And in that scenario, then council would be able to make a determination as to, there might be, a project that we feel is worthy of funding that may not be readily available, and we could find alternative methods to fund that program. I guess I'm concerned that it doesn't come to council for approval, yet a program that is less from a cost perspective comes to council for every decision and goes through the consent item process for us to at least acknowledge that there is a program. So I think we need to revisit that a little bit. I think we need a little bit more clarity on that program and when it's being utilized and how much it's being utilized, whether that's on a quarterly basis or a per application basis. But I think it's something council should be aware of and proud of, because I think that there are a lot of businesses out there that are benefiting from this program that we may not even know about until we see a picture in the paper, right? Or a big sign that we get tagged on or something. So,
Okay, thank you. Councillor Deakin.
Appreciate Councillor Lauren's point on that one. I just wanted to clarify as well, it says businesses throughout the document. Are we talking about anybody with a business number, which could include faith communities, nonprofits of other nature, that would be
Dagenet?
eligible? Or must it be a for-profit commercial business? Like how is that defined?
I'll have to look into to find this answer. I know you can change a residence to a business through the CIP. I think it's for everyone, but I'll have to come back with an answer for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just writing some notes. So, any other kind of discussion on the reporting to council piece that Councillor Lawrence brought up? Monsieur Godin?
Merci, Monsieur Maire. So just on that point there from Councillor Lauren's comments, if you do look at the plan at section 4.2, there is a monitoring and amendment section where we do mention that there would be some reporting to council as far as the program and its performance with certain performance measures for council to be able to evaluate the program and its success and to make some amendments if necessary.
Okay, thank you. My last question is the funding of it. So you've come up with the idea where the incremental tax value reassessments are going to fund the program, correct? How are you expecting to fund 2026? Are you going to go back in the books and look at all the previous CIPs and look at that to determine what value should go in there? Or is this going to start as we incrementally increase those? Because presumably, ça va prendre une couple d'années là, avant de commencer à avoir du financement qui va venir à travers ce projet-là.
Well, it's going forward, so the grants that we're gonna offer in 25, we're gonna recuperate that money in the next. It'll vary between 2 to 5 years, depending on the.
So in 2026, there is no funding for this program unless we.
No, the
put
reserve's gonna be negative.
There is, yeah.
And that reserve's gonna pay interest on the other reserve
see.
if you're,
Okay.
yeah, if it's in negative.
And then it'll eventually, ça va se renflouer éventuellement, et puis, okay. Okay, perfect. And so there is a process to report to council, not for every single application at this stage. And so we are acknowledging the receipt of this. Any other last comments moving forward? All right, item F. Economic and Community Development Strategic Plan Report EcoDev 2025-02. Monsieur Dagenet, before I give, que je vous cède la parole, je voulais juste demander le timeline pour le contrat. Et premièrement, le timeline, c'est quoi le timeline pour avoir le plan stratégique? Et deux, j'assume qu'il va y avoir opportunité par des résidents pour que ça soit ouvert pour des commentaires des résidents et du input. Juste confirmer ça, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, on parle de recevoir les résultats en août,
OK.
août-septembre 2025. Puis oui, il va y avoir des discussions publiques.
Formidable, merci beaucoup. Alors, questions, commentaires, membres du conseil. Questions, comments on this? Seeing none, this is exciting. Looking forward to seeing this project evolve. Conseiller Lalonde?
I'd just like to say thank you for the work that's gone into this so far, and I want to maybe tip my hat to the work of the Affordable and Attainable Housing Committee because of some of the language and some of the ideas that are now in this document came out of the report that group put together when we're talking about community economic development. These were expressions we were using in that report when we were talking about the need to create positions maybe and sort of realign. I used the word, they're not just interconnected as we argued back in the day between economic and community development, but they're interdependent, in fact, on each other. So I'm very pleased to see that in the space of a year, because we brought that report, that committee did in January 2024, that there's been this much work done on it, and that some of those recommendations from that committee are really being put into action. So I'm very pleased with the work that's been done by staff and council for supporting it and taking all this stuff so seriously. I appreciate that.
Excellent. Merci beaucoup, Conseiller Lalonde. Any other comments from members of council on this item? No, thank you. I can tell you just anecdotally, in speaking with different community organizations about this this plan and the new role and the new position, there's a lot of excitement with local community groups, looking forward to having more connection with the municipality as well from that perspective. So I think it's excellent on many fronts, so thank you very much. All right, moving to item G, demande de plaque provinciale commémorative pour le village partiellement autonome de Russell dans le parc McDougall, rapport verbal PR 2025. I know that this was a change. It was originally mentioned that it was coming from the Parks and Rec Committee, which it did not. So it's just an update from the department. Madame Guittard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. That is correct. That was a typo. So this is a request that came to the administration from the Police Village of Russell. They would like to make a request for a grant with the Ontario Heritage to be able to have a plaque commemorating the Police Village, which is the last one in Ontario. And they've asked the permission to install that plaque in the McDougall Park. So I'm bringing this recommendation to council for approval so that they can follow up with their grant application.
Thank you so much. Questions, comments, members of council on this item? Councillor Deakin?
I'm just really pleased to see this request come through, and I think it is extremely unique, the Police Village of Russell's existence and perseverance after all these years. And I'm just so grateful for the work that the Police Village of Russell trustees do for our community. And as someone who was new to our community 7 or 8 years ago myself, I had no idea what it was for the first few years. And it's just the more that people can know about the Police Village and the trust and the work of the trust, the better. So I'm very supportive of this. Glad to see it.
Thank you so much, Councillor Deakin. Any other comments? Moving to item H, recommendation ESAC 2024-06 of the Environmental Advisory Committee, Native Plants and Trees. So this came from the Environmental Committee and was vetted by the Infrastructure Department. Monsieur Bourgon, anything to add on that?
No, not really. On our end, we already started a few years ago to ask for native trees, part of our redevelopment or what we ask on subdivisions. So I think this one just pushed it further with plants, which.
It's fantastic. Okay. Questions, comments, members of council? No? I'm happy to see this move forward. Thank you so much. And we move to added item I. And so this is a verbal update from council meeting highlights. And so, Monsieur Godin, la parole est à vous, à travers vous, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Maire. So during the last council meeting, we came away with a few items to report back to council on. So tonight, we just like to take the opportunity to give council and the public a quick update, either provide council with the information we weren't able to provide, or give you a better idea of a timeline as far as when you can expect a report. So it's just going to be a quick update on a few different topics. So I'll start with there was a comment or a resident during question period that mentioned that Mr. Peter Fry, so who's a tax consultant with MTE, he informed the county council that industrial property is a depreciating asset and that tax rates don't go up at the same level as residential. And during last meeting, I couldn't really comment on that. I wasn't sure what the resident was referring to. So I did reach out to Mr. Fries for more context and to get a better understanding of those comments. So I'll just brief council with what he shared with me. Basically, he didn't recall the comment specifically that he presented to the county council, but he did explain to me a bit how the industrial properties are assessed by MPAC, which is basically using the cost approach, so the replacement cost approach. In other words, the value of the land plus the estimated value of the buildings. So he did confirm that depreciation is indeed a part of that whole valuation model, but there's a lot of other criteria as well to consider as far as the increasing value or the increasing cost, the replacement cost value, and the increasing value of land. So at the end of the day, he couldn't confirm, or basically the conclusion was that it can't really be stated that a property's value is going to decrease just because it's industrial. There's really a myriad of factors that work into that. So I just wanted to clarify those comments that were made.
I think just another added clarification too is in the context of that article itself, it was referring to a $40 million investment, and from the county's perspective, so not even directly from a township's perspective, if I recall correctly.
That's correct. And I think the comments from the resident were also presented as not an argument, but just as when we're looking at investing further into developing in our industrial park. And so I can assure council that over the last 7 or 8 years, our tax revenues have increased by more than $550,000, just directly related to the development and in the industrial park. So there is definitely added value on the taxation piece.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Godin. Okay, that's great. Any questions on that particular item? Thank you. Next.
Je vais laisser la parole à Monsieur Bourgon pour les prochaines mises à jour.
Merci.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire, membre du Conseil. So on my end, I do have a few updates. Last week, or our last council meeting, we discussed the extension of services on Saint-Jacques. So that report will come back to council only when the proponent will have the discussion or inform the tree affected owner. Part of that report, I'll also give more context to council as to when the flat fees are applied in different scenarios or context that happens over the last few years, different, if I can use the local improvement projects. So I'll be able to give council the full understanding of that information.
So we had deferred that, and so there is nothing from our end or your end at this stage until this comes back after the proponent
exactly.
was discussed. And at that time, we'll also cover that flat fee piece to get a full understanding of it.
Yeah,
Merci
exactly.
beaucoup. Okay.
Second topic, it was discussed part of again at last council meeting, the issue with the ammonia that we have in our wastewater. We will be bringing back our annual report in April. So we'll have all the 2024 data. So I'll be able to brief council on our current situation and as well to bring a report to to establish a roadmap with our master plan. So something easier to look at the potential and investment to be made in our water and wastewater. So to have like a resume of what it means in terms of units, something easier to follow. So that would be 2 reports coming in
April
time frame.
At the same time or separate reports?
There will be separate report because I want to make sure that it's understood that we have the growth proportion and the operation. Yes, they go hand in hand, but in this case, I believe 2 separate reports will be more appropriate.
Merci, Monsieur Bourgon. Question?
Not to this. This is more just a general question on this process of Section I right now. So if we're done with
We're not.
we still got more items in there?
Yeah.
Okay, well, when we're done this section, this
Okay.
Section I.
No problem. Okay. Anything else? Any questions specifically to the ammonia issue or anything like that? So it's coming back to us in April. And in April, we will also know because that's when we're doing the, comment on appelle ça?
Je dois apporter en avril notre rapport d'opération annuelle d'eau et d'égout pour être endossé par le Conseil. Donc, à ce moment-là, je pense que c'est une bonne opportunité d'apporter plus d'informations à ce sujet-là.
OK, merci.
Puis le dernier sujet, mise à jour, dans les minutes du comité d'environnement, il y avait une mention que j'étais pour apporter une ébauche pour la protection des arbres en milieu urbain. On travaille tout le temps notre 2 semaines de rapport à l'avance. Donc, pour cette raison, là, ça va être apporté à la prochaine rencontre de février.
OK, merci beaucoup. Madame Guittard.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire, membre du Conseil. On the last one, encroachment report. We said that we'd be bringing this back in January. Unfortunately, we had some legal questions to be verified. We finally got the answers today, so the report will be presented on February 24th.
Awesome, thank you so much. Any other points to add specific to these items, Monsieur Godin?
No, merci, Monsieur Maire. I can add some comments, but I'll let Monsieur Councillor Lauren, if you have any questions and you wanted to talk about the process.
Councillor Lauren?
Thank you. I think this is a very good exercise. I'm assuming it's something called a business arising from previous meetings section. And I think that we should, as council, direct staff to come back with a potential change to our procedure bylaw to allow us to add that to our council meetings. I think it's extremely important, and I love what we just did, but we shouldn't be adding that as a separate section, as a separate item each time. I think there should be a standing section, and they could be verbal. We don't necessarily have to know them all in advance, but I think there has to be a formal process for a business arising section, and I'm sure that there is within the procedure, within the procedure process that would just need to be added to our procedure bylaw. So I don't know how we do that. I think we have to open up the procedure bylaw one meeting and then come back with that whole process. I'm assuming that would be Madame Camille-Laflamme that would take on that responsibility in finding the sections that we would add this to. But I definitely think this is an important next step in our meetings. We used to have them, I believe, in our committee of the whole. If I'm not mistaken, I think when we had our committee of the whole, we had a business arising or from the committee of the whole to council. So I definitely think we need a section in our agenda that speaks to business arising from the previous council meeting. So
Thank you, Councillor Lauren. So that was discussions today. Monsieur Godin, you spoke to Madame Camille Laflamme.
Oui, merci, Monsieur Maire. So thank you for the comments, Councillor Lauren, and I agree. The reason this was added last minute like this is we did receive a lot of questions in the last couple of days or a few days, end of last week and today. So just wanted to make sure that, yes, we did address some things by email, but we wanted to be transparent with the public as well. So we did add it to the agenda in section 11 and just by adding 11I today. But we did have some discussions as far as developing that process moving forward for that to be more systematic and formal. Maybe we need to adjust the procedural bylaw, or maybe we can just use the consent items. We'll be discussing the different options as far as how to move forward with these updates in a smooth fashion.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. I think tonight was a good way of looking at it. I'm glad to get the feedback from council members on that way. So any other comments on that, Councillor Deakin?
I just really want to echo what Councillor Lorraine was saying. I really appreciated this item in tonight's agenda and hope that we can find a way to establish it as a regular update, and just that the word accountability comes to mind. I know that we're always trying to be open as local government, but that reporting back accountability piece is huge. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Great. I'm glad to hear it from everyone. All right. Moving to item 12, we have none. Rapport d'un investigateur ombudsman, we don't have any. 13, avis de motion, we don't have any. 14, période de questions sur la réunion du jour. Questions from any members of the public? So I'll just read my little blurb here. So questions must be in relation to the items on the agenda. Before asking a question, please fill in your name and address. If you wish to receive a response, please make sure you have contact information. Just a disclaimer that by asking questions during the council meeting, you are consenting to be part of a live broadcast and the official recording of this proceeding. Thank you. Mr. Hunt?
Julian Hunt, Caster. I have a couple questions with regards to the automated ticketing system. From what I read, we're only allowed to put these cameras in school zones and community safety zones, correct?
That's correct.
Do we have a community safety zone policy for the township?
Madame Bordeaux?
Yes, we do. I believe it's a bylaw, actually.
Okay. The main speeding areas that have been brought up to council over the last few years have been Forest Road, ED Road, and Castor, none of which have a community safety zone on them. And when Forest Road was brought up, I believe in December, we were told that it could not be made a community safety zone. From my reading through the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, there's nothing to stop us from doing that. So I'm wondering what at the local level is stopping us from putting those community safety zones on those roads, because as residents, we were told that we would do what we could, which was reducing the speed limit on Castor over the years from 80 to 60 and out of 50 at that intersection. And as someone whose office stares at that intersection every day, and I watch that intersection from 9 to 5, it's not doing anything. So to be told that, oh, well, automated security cameras are gonna be the difference, and then realize that we can't actually put them there, and then be told that we can't change those zones to community safety zones, what's currently stopping us? Like, do we need to change our policy so that we can put community safety zones here?
Okay, so your question is, what's stopping us? Are we allowed to put community safety zones anywhere we want, Madame Bordeaux?
My understanding is it has to be a school zone or a community safety zone, which what we've done in the past is the community safety zone is where there are numerous like parks or like, for example.
There's certain requirements.
North Russell Road, it's the library, the arena, the park, the baseball park, the trail, all the schools. So this would fit our definition. So I'd have to look back at the Highway Traffic Act, but as far as I know, most municipalities, that's how they apply it.
Yeah, so maybe we can get back to Mr. Hunt and copy council on that, on those requirements. I know that in Clarence Rockland, they were, as I was alluding to earlier, they were putting in a community safety zone in a specific area that would fit, but it was also, it had to meet certain requirements. So I know that there are certain requirements. Monsieur Bourgon, do you have anything to add on that?
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. So with all the changes that were made in the Highway Traffic Act, council can establish a community safety zone anywhere they wish to, bypassing a bylaw.
Perfect.
And that was information that was shared to council in their my report at the last meeting.
Okay, merci beaucoup. So that answers your
That
question.
change was made since we said no to Forest Road in December,
So that was at the last council meeting this was brought up.
or was the last?
Le 27 janvier, yeah. January 27th is when we received that information. Having said that, also just to point out specifically on the intersection that you stare at, there will be lights there, so
I
that'll
understand
definitely be
that,
a
but
permanent.
That affects one section
Yeah,
of it. Like
I
most of the
understand.
speeding is halfway between
Yeah.
Russell and Embrun, and we've changed that speed limit, and commuting there for my wife to work every day, that's not, it's not doing much.
Fair enough. Councillor Lauren?
Are you asking if we're going to change the speed limit between Russell and Embrun?
No, it has already been reduced from 80.
It was reduced from
Yeah.
80 to 60 back in 08, 09
And then it's
timeframe.
been reduced to 50 at the intersection of ED and Castle.
That's correct.
Correct.
From 60.
Yeah.
No, so I'm just asking how we're planning to use these automated security cameras to deal
So-
with these speeding issues. Because
so
that's what
the-
we were told would be
Well,
used to
okay,
address this when
just
it's brought
through
up
me,
to
please.
council.
So, do you have a follow-up to respond, or?
Yeah, I was just going to say preferably we have people to stop speeding,
I agree.
right? Like we can only put measures in place that will deter people. We can't put a measure in place to stop people,
I understand,
right?
but I agree with you and on the enforcement
Okay.
end.
I'm just going to keep it to questions, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Any other questions, Mr.
No, I think that covers it.
So just to finalize the question you did bring, so we are going to receive a report back with more details. I think three of the council members asked for additional information on this proposal to make sure that we fully understand that. And so in that process too, I think it's fair to say that we just get the full understanding of those community safety zones. I don't necessarily think that it's a good idea for us to put community safety zones. You get one, you get one, you get one. So we have to manage
Right.
that
But around
carefully.
where because the rec trail crosses ED where there's
So
speeding
there's,
issues
yeah,
and
so,
Castor, so I think.
so Madame Bordeaux is going to take a look at that and get back to us for that. Thank you so much.
you.
Appreciate it. Cheers. Okay, item,
One more.
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Those are evil eyes looking at me
Yeah,
here.
Tony Bass, you're not done with me yet. Have we hired McSweeney for the strategic planning?
Yes, I believe we have. Yes, the contract was signed already.
And how much is that costing us?
Monsieur,
No, actually, we
The
were
contract,
waiting
wait.
tonight,
yeah,
yeah. So the contract is not signed.
okay.
But if we do sign it, how much will it cost?
I think that was in the report, 50, 55?
Yeah, 55,000.
That's correct.
Okay, because it seems like every time we try to do something, we have to hire another contracting company to do stuff, like, I mean, for our grants for the
Yeah, I think
sports
that-
complex,
yeah.
we have to hire somebody. What's our strategic planner doing? I'm sorry, I
We
thought
don't have
hired somebody.
a role of it, like a person that's a strategic planner. We don't have a strategic planner per se. But if I use the example that you used of the grants, yes, we did pay a company to do that, but I think it's already paid off with the latest announcement of $6.3 million grant. I mean, there's some value that we are getting back from that. And I think as a council, when projects like this particular one are brought to our attention, we have to decide if we're going to spend that money on that project and the return that we're going to get. The return is not necessarily always dollar for dollar, but it may be in quality of life, or in this case, when we're looking specifically at the community development piece, it's not always on the dollar side, but that is a part of it. Councillor Lauren?
And historically, just so I can add some context to that as well, is we used to do a lot of this stuff internally, in-house, way back when. And unfortunately, the expertise isn't always there to draft all of these types of agreements and studies and RFPs and all that stuff that these consultant groups do. So you go outside and, you have council members that are criticizing staff because they're being asked to do something that's not within their purview or their expertise or why they were hired in the first place to be able to do that kind of stuff. So we go out and hire people that actually know what they're doing in that specific environment to maximize our ability to actually do stuff and free up our staff to do the jobs that they were hired to do. They weren't necessarily hired to write these types of proposals with the fine detail that are required to do so.
Thank you.
Right. Now, the CIP, you said it offers a grant for design plan, and is that for any type of building?
It's for commercial within within Russell and Embrun Village Core for
Oh, it has to be
businesses.
within the village core.
Yeah, that's correct.
So the farmers are excluded from this?
Well, it's not. It's specific to improving the commercial aspects in the core villages. That's what the CIP is designed for. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Monsieur Dagenet.
No, you're right.
Yeah, thank you.
So, how much is the internal tax levy going to be, like,
So,
when it's going to be implemented?
Sure. The internal tax levy is just the acceptance of the collection of the interim tax levy. Correct, Monsieur Godin, Monsieur Dagenet? Yeah. So we're not. It's not. It's just this process was just to agree that we are going to collect the interim taxes as we do every year. It comes to council for approval.
All right. And then the last question is, on the auto speed enforcement cameras, is there going to be a time saying it's going to be active and a time that it's not going to be active? So let's say if the schools are not going to be in, is it going to be dismantled at that time, or is it going to be continued on 24/7?
Sure, that's a great question. I think that will eventually come back to council for decisions on how that works. I think the only thing that we could say now, and Madame Bordeaux, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that the security camera, the speed radar, the photo radar cameras could be activated or deactivated at any time for any period. And so it'll be at some point a decision from operational decision in terms of how these are managed. Councillor Lauren?
I think that kind of defeats the purpose of speed enforcement if you're telling people, by the way, between the hour of 4 a.m. and 8 p.m., you're not going to, it's not working. Right? Like, it doesn't make any sense to tell people when it's going to be working. It should be working during the hours that we want it to work.
Yeah, so the only thing is I think it's whether it has the capability or not. At the end of the day, it'll be an operational decision. So I think
Great. I'm just wondering about
the process is that it allows us, and Madame Bordeaux, like we can, the township, once, if we do go down that road, can decide any of the parameters around the operation of those cameras, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so if there's no need for it to run.
Or if there is, or if there isn't, doesn't matter, we could decide that.
But we wouldn't advertise that.
No.
Probably not.
That was what I was taking from that is, are you going to advertise the hours for which it's going to be working? And that kind of defeats the purpose.
Yes. Councillor Armstrong?
Just one confirmation I'm looking for now. school zones are not in effect 24/7, only during school
That's
hours,
correct.
during school days. So those cameras in school zones would only be allowed to be operating during the school zone effectiveness times. And those are established in law, if I'm correct.
Yeah, but I think, again, goes back to an operational perspective. So the speed limit within the village is the speed limit, and then it's accentuated during those hours. Madame Bordeaux? Like, there is a further reduction during school times. Correct, Madame Bordeaux?
The fines are double in community safety zone and school zone, but I don't believe, I'll have to double check on the statement of the hours, but
But I know that often, certainly, I've seen it where the lights are flashing, you know, it's at that time of the day, and fines are doubled during that time, kind of thing. So,
Okay. That should be good for tonight.
thank you so much, appreciate it. Nice to see you. All right. Moving to resolutions. Motion that council approve all recommendations listed on the agenda either under item 11, reports from departments and council committees. And this is moved by Conseiller Lalonde, seconded by Councillor Lauren. I'll call for the vote. And that is passed. Thank you so much. Moving to item 16, bylaws. Motion that, this is really too simple tonight. I mean, like, I'm used to taking stuff out and being confused. So motion that council approve bylaws 2025-16 to 2025-22 inclusively for first, second, and third reading as listed on the agenda. And this is moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Lauren. I'll call for the vote. All in favor and pass. Thank you very much. Item 17, new business or reports, we have none. Under item 18, other business presented by councillor members. 18A, Councillor Armstrong, Rec Complex update. Councillor Armstrong, la parole est à vous, as we say. That's what I was trying to look for.
Thank you. I was just wanting to suggest, and I think we've already covered it in some way. We get our change orders on the rec complex monthly, but it doesn't give us necessarily how we're progressing down the timeline, if there's something being delayed, something ahead of schedule, so on and so forth. We're a quarter of the way through the construction period, less the soil loading. So it would be a good time, in my mind, to have an update on how we are doing on timelines and any other details and changes that are significant. It doesn't have to be very long, but it just has to be informative to not only us, but
Sure.
the public.
Absolutely, and if I can just, if you can clarify if I'm wrong on that, but are you asking for one report, or would you like to have like a little more detailed report than what's in our consent items on a somewhat of a regular, maybe every 6 months or something? Is that what you're looking for?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Monsieur Godin, Madame Guittard, would it be possible to add that on our agenda items as a, say, maybe biannual as we move forward, or maybe every quarter? A little bit more detailed than just simply saying that here's the balance on our change orders, and just to kind of get an idea of where we're at. And like, you know, because residents are asking, they see something going on, what do we do this month, or does that make sense? Do we need some sort of resolution for this, Monsieur Godin, or?
Merci, Monsieur Mayor. I think a direction is fine, but maybe more, if there's anything specific that council would like to see on that. I heard, are we delayed or on track? And otherwise, is there any specific highlights that you'd like?
Sure,
us to
and
include?
Councillor Armstrong, please add on if I'm missing anything. But when we looked at the project, there was a timeline of project of what pieces were happening, and for me, it would be good to know where we are in that stage. And also, again, going back to the point that residents are asking us, what's going on, where are you at? Just a little bit more kind of color commentary in terms of the where the process is at and what are the next big parts of the project update. Councillor Armstrong?
No, I think you've got
Okay,
it, yeah.
I appreciate
very
that,
much.
thank you. Does that make sense, Mr. Godin, Madame Guittard, yeah? So no resolution required? Okay, thank you. All right, number 19, public consultations, we have none. Number 20, announcements. Any members of council with announcement? Conseiller Lalonde.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just a shout out I'd like to give. I attended a presentation by the building department on July 30th. I think Councillor Armstrong was there for some of that as well. And I just want to compliment staff in the building department, Julia Tuff and Chief McBain. It was a well-attended event. We had all kinds of shapes and sizes of developers here, from the big ones to the small ones to residents applying for permits themselves for building additions. And I just want to give a shout out that was there for all of it. And Julia Tuff, I thought, did an excellent job of articulating all the changes that the group needed to know about in the building code, which hadn't been updated since 2012 or 2014. So she gave the highlights at 3,000 feet to the group. And the reaction at the end of the meeting from all of the people that were here, builders, developers, contractors, was that they really appreciated how well the material was presented and how relevant it was to their business. So just a shout out to that group, Julia, and to Chief McBain as well. I think it was very well done. Very important information service to the public.
Merci beaucoup, Conseiller Lalonde. Anything else to add? I've got, oh, you do? Okay, go ahead. You're stealing one of mine. Go ahead.
I think that there's a major milestone coming on the official planning process.
Go
Is
ahead.
that something? So I was just going to double check with staff when I believe there's an open house coming up. If I could
Wednesday?
get the date and the time.
Monsieur Bourgon, do you want to officially announce that then?
Monsieur Mayor, so yes, so on Wednesday at 6 here in council chamber, we'll have the open house for the official plan.
Excellent, thank you so much.
Merci.
So I've got three. I've got, first of all, I wanted to thank all the volunteers in Marionville for hosting the annual Carnaval. I had the pleasure of serving at the annual spaghetti dinner, and it's always an interesting place in Marionville. So I got to work with Councillor George Derouz from Ottawa and Mayor Tony Fraser from North Dundas. As you know, Marionville is where these three communities or municipalities, or somewhat you can say that, meet. And so it was a great evening. So that was very exciting for me. A shout out to Connie Johnson and all the volunteers that do amazing work at Russell Trivia. I had the opportunity of attending Russell Trivia on Saturday, and I think they raised over $6,700 for Autumn in the Country Art Festival, which is fantastic. So the next trivia night is March 29th to support Eco East, another great initiative. So I encourage everyone to go to that. And finally, I had an amazing opportunity to participate in a book launch by our very own Dr. Daryl Menard at the Legion on Saturday. His book, Diary of a Deployed Doc, is about his time in Bosnia between 1998 and 99. As you know, Dr. Menard is a staple in Russell and was here recognized not too long ago for all the work he's done for our community. So it was great to see that happening. So thank you very much. Moving to item 21, strategic discussion, we have none. Moving to item 22, closed session. Motion to move into closed session pursuant to section 239(2), 3, and 3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001, SO 2001, Chapter 25. I'd like a motion to move into closed meeting at the hour of 8:04, thank you, 8:04 p.m. to address matters pertaining to section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001, SO 2001, Chapter 25, to consider matters relating to 1, ongoing investigation by the ombudsman verbal report, and 2 closed session minutes, regular council, minutes of the regular closed session minutes of the regular council meeting from January 27th. And that is moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Lauren. Call for the vote. All in favor. We are now moving to closed session, and we'll take 2 minutes if anyone needs a quick break.